Alright team, welcome to the cheapest Harley-Davidson on the market, the X350. And I'm not going to lie, been thinking long and hard about whether or not I was actually going to publish this video, or even record it to begin with. Because, well, rather than beat around the bush, this thing's disappointing in a number of ways. So, we'll pull up in a nice park and we'll go around the nicer features of it, and then I will explain why I think Harley-Davidson's missed the mark with this motorcycle. Because let's face it, if you're not in the learner approved market in Australasia, you're not in the market. That's the largest selling market by number of bikes, and it's the way you sort of lock riders in early on. You get them in early on your products, they start to get emotionally attached, and then they hopefully, the idea is, buy their next motorcycle from your brand. Harley has been in this market before, the the Street 500, and that thing continues to sell, what is it, 3 years now after it was discontinued, for guaranteed around $9,000 to $10,000, which is what this costs. This is $9,500. Well, $9,490, I believe, plus on-road costs, so thereabouts 10 grand. And with it you get a warranty, brand new bike, and let's face it, pretty sweet styled bike. So we will find a place to pull over where I'm not going to get run over by cars, and we'll have a quick look at this bike and what makes it cool. Then we'll hit the road and I'll explain why I think Harley has missed the mark in multiple areas with this thing. So, sun's there. Let's see if we can get a nice spot to pull over here. Oh, good God. Alright. So we'll pull her over here, switch off the 360 camera. Right. So, Harley-Davidson X350. As I said, cheapest Harley-Davidson on the market. They also do an X500. This one's a, what is it, 353cc parallel twin. Puts out about 36 horsepower if I remember the spec sheet correctly, and styling wise it's meant to take inspiration from American flat track, so similar to the new Sportster S. Similar vibes there. Chunky wheels, the 17 inches front and back, so already we're kind of shifting away from the dirt side of things, more street biased. You got LED headlight, LED indicators, twin discs at the front, brake wise, single at the rear. Styling wise though, it's a Harley. They've done a pretty bang up job here. So this bike's based on the QJ350, Benelli 350 platform, and yeah, what Harley's done, different tank, different tail section, different plastics, different headlight, and a different dashboard. I think it's taking a step back. It's a good looking motorcycle. So it's got a lot of cool things about it. The engine itself's lovely, bit quiet, and a bit buzzy when you start really flogging it, but it is a small bore motorcycle. The swing arm's cool, tubular steel, not aluminium or ugly big hunks of metal. The seat styling, nice and wide and nicely sculpted to keep you locked in there and feeling like you're not going to slide off the back of the motorcycle if you're a beginner. That's another cool thing. Adjustable suspension. So, you can't really see it because of my bits and bobs. Let's see. Here we go. Got a suspension adjustment at the front fork, and you got preload adjustment on the rear there. So, $9,500. that's kind of where this comes a bit unstuck, and where the good old Harley tax comes into play, because the 500cc version of this, the X500, styled quite differently, is based on the Benelli Leoncino 500. And Harley is priced at $2,000 more than the Benelli. It uses the same dash, moderately redone styling, but they charge $2,000 extra. And this market in particular, where the 350 sits, is highly competitive. We now have the likes of Triumph in there, Royal Enfield with their new Himalayan, and they're soon to have a new 450 single based off the Sherpa engine. You've got Royal Enfield with their other 350s, so you've got the 350 singles, including the Hunter 350, which I think slots up against this. And most of all, you've got Yamaha, the R3, not R3, the MT-03, which is priced $1,000 less than this bike. And, well, we'll hop on it, and I'll tell you why. I think Harley's missed the mark a bit with this. So, firstly, sitting in here, it's a bit compact. It is a small class motorcycle, but I feel a bit cramped. Switchgear, a bit cheap. Looking at the fitment there, I'm not sure how close you can see that. But yeah, it starts to, you get up close and it starts to come a bit unstuck. So the dashboard here, above my phone with the quad lock, the speedo reads 10% out, guaranteed. No matter what speed you're doing, it's 10% out. So at 50 kilometers an hour, you're doing 45. At 80, you're doing 72. At 100, you're doing 90. So I rode this up the expressway to Auckland a couple of weeks ago, and everyone was flying past me. I was sitting on the speed limit of 110, and in reality, I was doing 100 or less. So everyone was just flying past me, and yeah, I wasn't too sure. The other thing was, stopped doing it now, thankfully, but my first ride on this, I brimmed the tank, had a full tank of gas, and the fuel light came on for 27 kilometers with a brand new filled up tank. So already I'm sort of seeing issues with this dash cluster in terms of what it's got. So it does have a fuel light, doesn't have a fuel gauge. We're in 2024, Harley. A fuel gauge is not hard to implement. You've got the one button push here, you can go through 2 trip meters. In your Odo, you've got a clock. You've also got your RPMs. That's it. So yeah, it's like a dash from the late 2000 period. So it very much reminds me of the dash of my Hangasung GT250, which I learnt on, and that was a 2006 model. The only thing that's different between this and that is the digital insert. So yeah, disappointing in that regard. Now, grab and brake. Got some powerful twin piston brakes up front, and they're on twin discs. Adjustable levers, which is a very nice touch for a learner bike, but these are the most wooden feeling brakes I think I've ever had the experience of. Yeah, the brakes are incredibly wooden. They've just got no feel to them. And you have to grab them. They're powerful, but you have to grab them quite strongly. Like 3-finger grip. You can 2-finger them, you can't 1-finger them really. So in the nice category is, again, we'll go back to this, to having some definite good points about it. You've got an adjustable levers, not only the clutch and brake on the handlebar, but also the foot brake and the gear shifter. You've got a little pivot point on there, so you can undo a Allen key and move it around to suit you better. Basically moving the lever closer to you or further away depending on your shoe size. And I think that's a great thing, because when I first got on this, I wasn't really gelling with the gearbox. Sort of, it has quite a long throw to it, so adjusting that has made it a bit better. So doing 9,000 RPM right now, and it's just starting to get a bit buzzy in the foot pegs. That's another annoying thing. So, brand new motorcycle, left grip, spins. Just tiny details like that, which I've not experienced so much on the other bikes in this class, and bikes which are more inexpensive. Or cheap, which unfortunately the Harley feels cheap, but it's not priced cheap, it's priced at a premium in its class. And that's why I think they've only sold about 18 of these things so far this year. Yamaha sold similar numbers of the MT-03, but if you add in the R3, which is the same bike with the fairing, they've sold 4 times as many. Triumph's been in the market since February with its 400s. They've sold over 100 Triumph 400s. And then don't get me started on Royal Enfield, because they just continue to chug along, selling easy to ride, learner approved motorcycles, no frills, no fuss, but well put together, and they've got a great community around them. Oh. Now I've chosen a great day to do this, with it being winter and slippy, and I don't really have huge confidence in the tyres, or the bike for that matter. It's mossy this road, slippery on a good day. Now on a bike you're sort of iffy about, it's a bit hard to push it. Not that you really can with this bike, it feels anything but fast. For a 350 twin, it feels a bit underpowered, if I'm completely honest. Gotta work that gearbox. How far? Let's see what its red line is. So red line's at 11.3. But anything over 9,000 RPM and your feet are buzzing to the point where you want to take them off the pegs. And there really isn't that much point in revving it. Oh, this front brake's horrible. Because diminishing returns, there's not really a lot of top end power there, it just revs. There we go, fuel light's on. Is that an accurate fuel light reading, or is it because I went past 120 kilometers an hour? We'll soon find out. Oh, this front brake is just... So when I say wooden, which you'll probably hear a lot of old school journos say wooden brakes. Oh look, fuel light's gone out again. I went over 120 kilometers an hour, fuel light comes on. Well, 120 kilometers on the speedo. In fact, you're doing 108. So that's what I found when I was doing my big ride up to Auckland. You go over 120 kilometers on the speedo and the fuel light would come on. Come on, Harley. Like, I know this is made with QJ motor in China. I know it's essentially a rebadged Benelli, but you guys are charging $9,500 for this thing, and it is really hard to find justification in that apart from the Harley badge. And in this market you want to attract buyers to your brand, and you do that by offering them value, and I'm just not seeing it with this bike. I'm sorry. So another thing that came up on my ride to Auckland was comfort. So I'm 5'8", 5'9", 175-ish centimeters tall, and yeah, riding up to Auckland on the expressway, it's about an hour and a half. By the time I got there, I needed to stretch my knees were hurting. It is quite a compact little bike. So if you are a particularly tall rider, you're better off looking at the 500. Which is a substantially larger motorcycle in terms of its frame and how it fits you. Or, if you're really set on a Harley, look at the old Street 500. There are so many accessories for those things around, you can actually make them fit you really well. Which brings me to another point about the X350 and the X500. No accessories whatsoever. So Harley-Davidson is famous for its big book of accessories. It is literally over an inch thick and covers accessories for motorcycles in the entire range except these two. So the local dealer who I picked this up from, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get them in trouble, they were having to retrofit Benelli parts to try and make these bikes a bit cooler, give them a cool factor. So you had an exhaust off a Benelli Leoncino because Harley doesn't offer any accessory parts of these at all. And I think that is a massive mistake from Harley. Again, you're paying $9,500 for these motorcycles for the privilege of owning a Harley. Part of owning a Harley is modifying it, and they're not encouraging that. Now, I'm sure there's probably a reason for it, there always is, but no Kiwi motorcyclists were invited to the official Australasian launch in Australia last year when they paraded these things around a stadium, and it would have been nice to sort of be able to pick their brains, because I just don't get it. For a brand as famous and American as Harley-Davidson to be selling rebadged Chinese motorcycles that they priced at a premium for their market, and for them to just fall so flat on their face, it blows my mind. So I'd love it to be a dry day to see what this is like cornering nicely and flogging it. These are some awesome turns, but I am not going to risk hurting myself or throwing this bike down the road for losing traction. So the new Triumphs, so Speed 400 would be the bike that competes with this most. That is ABS and cruise control, 40 horsepower out of a single cylinder engine. You've got ABS on this, about 36 horsepower from a twin cylinder engine. I feel like all I'm doing is complaining about this bike, but it has been a huge disappointment. In terms of riding, say, the Royal Enfield Hunter around these roads, I found that disappointing. It had 20 horsepower, and Royal Enfield made a big song and dance about it being the lightest and most sportiest 350. And once I found it was in its correct place, the city, that actually I found its redeeming factors. I haven't been able to do that with the Harley. Let's see, can I make a nice looking photo out of this? Probably not, because there's heaps of shit on the ground. Nah, we'll go for another spot. So, I don't know. This bike has been a real eye-opener on what not to do, I think. Like, they've styled it quite nicely. The quality is somewhat lacking. Like, you can just pull the plastics off. It's definitely made for a smaller person, but then again, that's exactly what these bikes were made to do. They weren't actually made for the Australasian market in mind. They were made with Asia in mind. So think about Harley-Davidson in actual China. Makes a bit more sense when you think about it that way. But for our market here in New Zealand, it is unfortunately the wrong bike at the wrong time at the wrong price point. So unlike the Street 500, it's not a V-twin, what Harley is famous for producing. It does have a 270-degree crank, I believe, if the numbers on the cylinder head are to be believed. But yeah, it is the wrong bike for the market. The market's moved on. So it's been in New Zealand since the beginning of the year, and it's just failing to fire. And I think that's just because the only people really buying these bikes are Harley fanatics, or they're buying it for, they're downsizing and they just want a little nimble runabout, or they're buying something for their wives or partners. But if you look at the rest of the market, there are much better motorcycles for a lot less money, and that's the big problem with this bike. Sure, it looks great, sure it's got that iconic Harley-Davidson badge, but at the end of the day, it's overpriced for what it is. So, I'll leave you with that. I just realised I completely forgot to actually explain what I mean by wooden feeling brakes. So I'll do that while I'm waiting for traffic. So a wooden brake is when you grab the lever and the braking action feels like you are grabbing a block of wood. So it relates to both power and feel. And unfortunately on this bike you grab the lever and all I can think of is squeezing a 2x4. It's just not, they're powerful brakes, yes, but you got to grab at them with all four fingers to really get anything out of them, and then at that point you're not really controlling them that well. So yeah, wooden front brake is perhaps one of the biggest sins of this bike, and that could possibly be a item that could be rectified at its first service. This bike has done all of 700 kilometers, I believe, so that could possibly be tuned out with a re-bleed. But these bikes are given to journalists. They're meant to be in working order as they're meant to be from the factory. They've passed their quality control tests, and they're meant to be a good analogue for what the buyer experience is. And if that's what everyone's front brake feels like, I'm disappointed to say the least. So, cruising along here on the highway, cops everywhere. Having accurate speedo is something that you want to rely on. You want to know what speed you're doing. And again, this very cheap looking dash unit here, it reads 10% out. So on this bike I've got the quad lock with my iPhone running the Rev app. It's got GPS speed. Right now I am doing, what, 90 kilometers an hour? It says I'm doing 70. So yeah, accuracy of your speedo, Harley, is questionable. Sitting at 50, 80 and 100, just sitting there, evening it out. It does seem to be 10% out, but yeah, accuracy, speedo, like I know most vehicles, their speedos aren't reading 100% accurate, but to be 10% out seems like a pretty huge variation. One nice thing I can say about this bike, and it's something that it does better than the Triumphs, is its low speed on-off fueling is much smoother and crisper. So that's one place where I found the Triumph 400 kind of fell a bit flat, was its on-off throttle fueling response was a bit iffy. This is much nicer. What other nice things can I say about this bike, other than the styling? Mirrors are pretty rubbish. I can't see much behind me. They're very vibey and blurry. Ooh, very buzzy mirrors. So I'm doing 5,500 RPM, and I can see that there's a car behind me. I can't see much detail about it. You can feel a lot of vibration going through these mirror stalks. Howdy, old fella. Oh, alright, let's go for a passing manoeuvre. We're doing 110. Oh look, fuel lights come on because I'm doing over 120 kph according to the speedo. What's going on here? Ooh, lovely. So yeah, going over an indicated 120 on this speedo sets the fuel light off. And then, once it calms down a bit, the fuel light will go back off again. Unless I'm actually at low fuel for once. But this doesn't have a fuel gauge. Like, yep, there we go. Fuel light's gone off again. Diabolical for something with premium pricing from a reputed manufacturer to be so iffy. Right, so this is going to be boring as hell. So I'm going to switch off the cameras and we'll yeah, leave it there.